Bob Good here with your weekly good news from Washington. And the first thing I wanted to share is I'm so proud and thankful to have been elected chairman of the House Freedom Caucus. As many of you know, I've been a member of the House Freedom Caucus for 3 years, ever since I came to Congress, serving on the board or the leadership team the last 2 years and serving as the whip. And just this past week, my peers on the board and the overall membership voted overwhelmingly to select me as their new leader effective January 1. And I look forward to continuing to fight for you as the leader of the House Freedom Caucus, particularly trying to secure our border, cut our spending, and defend our constitutional freedoms. And so I'm excited about what the new year holds in that capacity. On the House floor, we did vote yesterday to move forward with a formal impeachment inquiry with respect to President Biden. I think there's overwhelming evidence coming from our Judiciary Committee that he was involved and benefited from his family's corrupt business dealings with overseas adversaries, and I think that needs to be investigated appropriately. And if the evidence indicates that there's a reasonable belief in that he's guilty, then we ought to move forward with impeachment, full impeachment out of the House. I will also tell you that today, unfortunately, I voted against the National Defense Authorization Act because it was a backroom secret deal negotiated between Senate Majority Leader Schumer and Mitch McConnell on the Senate side and our Speaker and the House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, instead of working through the conference committee, and we lost almost all of the good Republican priorities that were in our version of the bill, and we didn't have a chance to make amendments to it to try to improve it. It keeps in place most of the climate priorities, most of the woke DEI, transgender funding, transgender surgery and treatment, and abortion funding, and it's just the wrong focus for our military. But it also included an extension of FISA, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, without any of the reforms to protect our constitutional liberties. It continues the ability for federal law enforcement to spy on U.S. citizens without a warrant, and I wasn't willing to vote for a bill that had that in it. So I'm disappointed that it did pass the House under suspension of the rules, primarily with Democrat votes. I am pleased that this week my third bill to pass the House passed Transparency and Coverage Act. It is a bill that will bring greater competition, accountability, and transparency in healthcare billing to try to bring costs down. A good bill that I was proud of. Unfortunately, I ended up having to vote against my own bill because they combined it with 3 other bills in a four-bill package, and 2 of the bills I had real issues with. So I'm glad my bill passed, but I wasn't able to vote for the other 3 bills that were combined in that package. Crazy way that sometimes Washington works. In my Education Workforce Committee, we did do a markup on my bill, the Small Business Before Bureaucrats bill, which would reduce the number of businesses that are under the jurisdiction of the National Labor Relations Board. And what that would do is just remove the heavy hand of government on small businesses across the country. And that got passed out of our committee markup, and hopefully we're bringing that to the House floor for a vote soon. Also, I held a hearing in my health subcommittee where I chaired that subcommittee on health, employment, labor, and pensions, and we had a subcommittee meeting on protecting workers across the country in terms of having the right to work and not being forced to join a union or to pay union dues against their wishes. Everybody ought to have the freedom to choose on that, and so we had a hearing to try to expose the harm of forcing individuals to have to pay union dues against their will. Finally, I introduced my latest bill, the Rein in the EPA Act, and what that is doing is fighting against Biden's efforts to force on over 100,000 businesses, to force them to just some onerous, burdensome, excessive requirements on how they report emissions to the EPA, and it's just more climate extremism. It will cost businesses unnecessary thousands of dollars, which is passed on to U.S. consumers, so we're fighting back against that. Well, that's the report from this week from Washington. Thank you for the privilege of representing you in Congress.